So, good morning, everyone. I'm Patrick Bach from Cyber Protection Magazine, and today we have Itzik from Checkpoint to talk about IoT and IIoT, so the Internet of Things and the industrial Internet of Things, and how to secure them. And maybe, Itzik, if we can start with the office part of the IoT. So what are, in general, office IoT devices?
Okay, so first of all, since you say an IoT and IIoT, we can also maybe add IOMT, Internet of Medical Things, also very important. And we can look on that for two points of view. We can look on it from a technology point of view, but also from a vertical point of view. And the reason I'm saying that is because the type of the devices that we are seeing is very depending on the environment that we are seeing those devices in. So for example, if you will go to an enterprise can be a bank, it can be a high-tech company, insurance company, they need to deal with a huge number of smart office and smart building devices that are connected to the network. Smart office devices can be devices such as printers, IPTVs, IP phones, IP cameras. In most of the cases, those devices are connected to the IT network of this enterprise or it can be a small office. But we also have building or smart building devices in the same environment. It can be different sensors inside the building, motion detectors, smart lighting, smart elevators. In many cases, those devices are also connected to the enterprise network, but using different protocols such as BACnet, DryNex, KNX, and so on. So it's a mix of two different types of devices in one environment. This is what we are seeing.
Okay, and if you want to secure them, maybe I give you an example from my own setup. Because what I've done is I separated the networks from all of my smart home devices to the sort of office devices, the computers, and yeah, the printers even, which I have on my network. Isn't that enough, just separating the networks from each other?
Okay, so first of all, it's very depending what type of environment are we talking about. In the case of home environment, it's very simple to do that. You know exactly what type of devices you have inside your home. So you can say, okay, this is the washing machine, this is the smart thermostat. I will put those devices usually on a separate VLAN or a separate SSID that is connected to my home router. But going into enterprises, the main challenge is that many of those devices are unmanaged devices, meaning that even so that those devices are connected to the network, and we're talking about a huge number of devices, we don't have a clue about those devices, how they are connected to the network. If we will go to the existing IT security system and we'll try to configure those devices, we will not find those devices. All of those devices are there, they are connected to the network, but we don't have any visibility to those devices. So you might have a huge number of printers and IPTVs, as I mentioned before, surveillance cameras. You don't have any way to configure the policy for those devices, defining what they can do, what they cannot do inside the network, to which VLAN to connect them, because those are unmanaged devices, meaning you don't have any system that enables you to control those devices and to manage them. So
okay.
Maybe this is really the main challenge when you are dealing with those devices.
Maybe if I can add to that, because there are search engines like Shodan in the internet, which actually show you available surveillance cameras, for example. It's very easy to find a lot of surveillance cameras, and it's also very easy to see that most of them, which you can find, are on company properties.
Exactly.
But if I don't have any visibility into these devices, how can I protect them?
Okay, so from a security point of view, what we look at is three pillars. when looking on the security itself. Since the challenge is that the first challenge is that you have a huge number of devices, unmanaged and invisible devices. So the first step will be to find those devices. We have a technology, it sits inside the network, it monitors the network traffic, and through this traffic using deep packet inspection, you can find all the devices inside the network. You can discover those devices. Now, it's not only about discovering the devices itself, being able, okay, you have an IP camera, you have an IPTV, it's also about classifying those devices, telling you exactly what those devices are doing inside your network and what the risks that those devices pose inside your network. So you get in a full intelligent map. This is the first step of all the devices inside the network. The second step will be to take all of this information and to turn it into a suitable policy. Now let's define what those devices can do or cannot do inside the network. Who can access those devices? So the first step is finding those devices. The second step is to define a policy and also to enforce this policy inside the network using the security gateways and the other security controls inside the network, such as the switches and the routers. And the third step is also very important, is to identify and block IoT malicious traffic. And the attackers usually, they are very sophisticated. So they can get connections to those devices and then use known vulnerabilities, for example, to hack into those devices. So we can also analyze the traffic that goes inside the network to identify malicious traffic using, again, deep packet inspection technology. We're looking for the attack patterns that are related to those known vulnerabilities. And in such a case, we will block this traffic, and we can do it at the perimeter before it is entering the network itself, but also inside the network, we can monitor the traffic between the different devices and to prevent what we call in lateral movement. So you might have an infected IoT device inside the network. You want to identify, to isolate it, and to prevent it from compromising other devices and network elements.
Yeah, I think compromising is a very good keyword here. We've seen, I think, two major data breaches in the past, in the recent past. One was the water supply attack in Florida, and just recently there was also an attack on a brewery in the United States.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether these have been related to IoT devices or IIoT devices, but it definitely sounds like these are the sort of attacks which you want and can prevent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so specifically regarding the brewery, we still investigate. It just happened a few days ago. But regarding the attack against water systems, so yes, those attacks, we're facing those types of attacks quite a lot. And I will give you an example, even an example that happened here in Israel about a year ago. There was a cyber attack attempt against the water system here in Israel. Nothing seriously, of course, really happened, but it was all over the news. Looking into a water system, usually you will notice that it's a very complex system. There are many subsystems inside and many types of elements and devices. Inside, you will also find water pumps. In many cases, those water pumps are connected to the internet through a smart controller. And there are lots of different types of controllers in the market. And in a typical controller, on one side, there is a serial interface that is connected to the pump. You can open or close the water pump. And on the other side, there is internet connection. In many cases, those water pumps are located in far locations, so you are using those controllers to control them remotely. Now, we found out that many of those controllers comes with a default password, some of them with a hard-coded password. You can't even change this password. And one of those controllers, by the way, came with the password 00000000, 8 times 0. This is the password. You can't change this password, by the way. So think about the scenario. You can find those devices quite easily because they are connected to the internet. As you mentioned before, you can go and search for them in Shodan website or other scanning tool. It's quite easy to find those devices because you know what types of characteristics you should look for. And you can look for specific devices in specific location. For example, in Florida, let's find all the devices that are connected to the internet who are using those protocols that we know about that probably related to water pumps. Find those ones that are based with default passwords, and there it is. You can now, it's not even hacking, it's just you have the password. So connect to those devices, and now you can change, for example, those water pumps, open, close them, or cause more severe damage. It's, I hope that you will not do that, but this is usually how it goes.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the worrying part. That it's sometimes really easy to attack those devices. As you said, it's it's not really an attack because you're not really doing anything. You're just looking for things.
Exactly.
And I think that's more or less what happened in Florida, right? I mean, it wasn't. It was more or less an open connection everyone could find, and it wasn't that difficult to get into it.
Exactly.
Now, another question I have, because what we're talking about now is, of course, companies which do have a lot of essentials. There are, they're of a certain size. A brewery has a certain size. A water supply company has a certain size. How does protecting these with deep packet inspection, for example, how does it scale? And by scaling, I mean in both directions. So both for a really big company. So if we take brewery, we probably want to talk about companies like Anheuser-Busch or something. But even to smaller companies like microbreweries who only have one plant and maybe not that many devices, but they probably, or they would even more face the same challenge because they don't have a dedicated IT security department.
Okay, so let's start with we're talking about size, and we can go very small or very big. So let's start with the very big, or in the typical companies that we are working with, they already have security controls inside the network. I mentioned that before. It can be security gateways. Sometimes those devices are being referred to as firewalls inside the network. You have other security controls such as switches, routers, NAC solutions, and so on. Now, once you have those security controls inside the network, you have enforcement points. So as I mentioned before, if you can find the IoT devices, and this is what our technology enabling us to do, to find those devices, you can go to those security points and to set policies, what can go and what shouldn't go inside those security points. In case you are using a security gateway, a firewall, we can go into a concept of virtual patching. Many of those devices, as I mentioned, have known vulnerabilities, but inside our security gateway, we know how to analyze the traffic and to find those attack patterns that are related to those known vulnerabilities and to block them in those cases. Now, looking on the other side, on the very small companies, and we can go even to home customers, or that you have a smart vacuum machine or something like that. Probably you don't have every firewall inside your home. We also have a technology, we're calling it nano agent technology. We are working with the IoT manufacturers themselves, and we're already working today with several leading manufacturers, and we're helping them to develop and to provide their customers safe to use IoT devices by integrating this nanotechnology, this software agent nanotechnology into those IoT devices themselves. These very small software components run inside the IoT device without disrupting the normal operation of the device itself. It is very important. And since it sits now inside the IoT device, you can analyze the CPU behavior, the memory behavior, the traffic behavior inside the IoT device, and of course, to block threats in case they happen. And as I mentioned, we are working with the IoT manufacturers themselves, with their R&D departments, in order to integrate this nano agent technology into the IoT devices during the manufacturing process.
Okay, that's also a very important point. First of all, the virtual patching, because I think this is a concept which is very interesting from my point of view. And it's sometimes even aside from the fact that some devices you just cannot patch because they're just not made for it. But I think there's another aspect, especially for producing companies, which is that those companies and those devices need to run 24/7, so you cannot just take them offline for a thing. So that's one thing. The other thing, what you mentioned that as well, by working with the manufacturers and making the devices more secure. But what does in general need to change for IoT devices? And I realize that we're probably talking about more consumer devices here, because for consumers, price is always the deciding factor, and security is an additional cost for an IoT device. So a lot of companies just don't bother about security. And that also goes into small and medium-sized businesses because they also don't have the budget. What can they do to if they know they have insecure devices? What can they do to protect their?
Okay, so start with the basic things. Okay, think about segmentation. This is very important. You mentioned that you are doing that at your home. The segmentation is something that is very easy to do. Change the passwords inside those devices. Very important. Most of the IoT devices comes with a default password, and also make sure don't connect to the internet devices that shouldn't be connected to the internet. In many times, those devices come with a default internet connection. The vendor of the surveillance camera would like the camera to communicate with their cloud service in order to do analytics, monitoring, and so on. You don't need to use that. Okay, so basically this is the entry point. If the device is connected to the network through a default password, basically it is very easy to hack into this device. So try and block that. It is very easy to do that. You still need some basic technology and knowledge in order to do that, but it's not an in-depth knowledge, okay? So the segmentation, change the password, make sure that those devices are, sometimes you need to connect them to the internet, but not always. So if you don't need to connect them, don't connect them to the network. And also make sure to purchase devices that have some basic of security certification. I mentioned checkpoint, but it doesn't have to be checkpoint. Okay, so if the vendor of the device telling you that there's some basic security certification, I think it will be better to use those types of devices.
Okay, then maybe one final question. You offer, as I understand, that technology for all sorts of companies, and do you have anything specific for small and medium-sized businesses?
At Checkpoint, we have a complete portfolio for small, medium-sized businesses. It's a one gateway that is being used in those small, medium-sized businesses that combines everything inside. Okay, so you have the firewall, you have the threat prevention capabilities, you have a sandbox capabilities. This is a very smart gateway that also communicating with our security cloud service. And inside this gateway, we also providing the IoT security capability. So it's all inside one box, very simple to use. You can deploy it inside the SMB, a small business. The size of a small business, sometimes it's very depending what country we are talking on. Okay, in the States it can be 500 users, but in Germany it can be 20 users or 30 users. But at the end of the day, it's very scalable, by the way, and we have several models, so we can adapt to the size of the business. So it's, again, very simple box, easy to deploy, very intuitive, and everything is being managed through a cloud management service. So also from the customer point of view, in case you would like that, it's very depending on the customer. There is a very intuitive and easy to connect to cloud management service to this device.
Okay, thanks, Itzik. I would definitely agree with most of what you said. Basically, make sure that you don't neglect security. It's a very important point these days, even for small companies. But besides doing the sort of basic hygiene in terms of security, it is important to get a specialized solution depending on your type of business. And if you have a lot of IoT devices, even more so because these types of devices are sometimes insecure. So yeah, thank you very much. It was a very nice conversation today, and yeah, maybe we can do that again in I don't know, a little bit of time and see if things changed and things have become more secure.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.